let's get started with our Conway cohort final presentations. First things first, I really want to thank you all for taking the time to be here. I'm Sophie, the Academy Director here at Futureproof, and I will be your host for this 1 hour long demo session. My role here at Futureproof is to look after all of our individuals when they're students, when they're associates, when we're finding them in the first place, and to make sure that they are finishing their time with us as amazing tech professionals that are really adding value to the workforce and starting incredible careers in technology. This is why these kind of demo days are especially exciting for me, because we're celebrating this midway point in our fabulous students' journeys. And today we have 15 amazing individuals to showcase to you all. And before we start with all of that, I have 3 lovely bits of admin for you all. So let's just get that out of the way straight away. First of all, this session is being recorded. So if you want the link afterwards to send on to colleagues or anyone else, just let myself or your other Futureproof contacts know, and we can get that link over to you. The second thing I ask all of you to do is to hover over your face on your Zoom, double click on those 3 dots in the top right hand corner and rename yourself. If you could just add the company that you're with, or the reason you're here, or whatever it is after your name, it really helps me when I'm fielding the Q&A piece later on in the session. The other thing is, just as we are now, we'll be spotlighting all of our speakers throughout the session. So if you want to go up to your top right hand corner, click on that view button and change to side-by-side speaker, you'll get the best experience. That's all the admin out of the way, so we can move on to the fun stuff. Most of you will know that we started Futureproof to solve 2 key issues in the market. First of all, it was to solve the digital skills gap, and secondly, to improve diversity in the tech industry by trying to launch and develop the tech superstars of the future. The way we've done this is by making a course that is free for our students, firstly, to affect diversity, and you'll hopefully see that reflected today. And secondly, really to make sure that getting top quality people through. And again, as you'll see today, the bar is really, really high. The people you'll hear from have been selected from over 1,000 applicants, assessed on not just their technical skills, but also their attitude, as we know how important this is when starting a career in tech. They've spent the last 3 months learning with the wonderful Sergi, Vesna, and other members of our training team, and will soon be ready to start working on their placements on client site, where we continue to support and develop them through their journey in tech. Over their time training with us here over the past 13 weeks, they've learned how to code in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and Python. But what we teach here is so much more than just learning how to code. It's way beyond just those 5 languages. What we're really teaching our students is how to learn. So whenever they go into your companies, they can adapt to a multitude of environments and roles. So on top of those 5 languages I've just listed, they've also learned containerization, cybersecurity, testing, version control, performance, and so much more. We've got a real focus on techniques, not tools here. So our individuals are learning new things all the time, and you'll see that showcase through the diversity of the 3 presentations that we've got for you today. For their final presentations today, which I won't hold you back from much longer, we have 3 teams who will be showing off what they've created in just 1 week. And I think you are going to be pretty blown away by what's been created. We gave 3 of our teams the brief to build a full stack app with a back end in Python that needs to have at least 60% test coverage, be well-defined user stories, and have an awesome README. So without any more time, let's hand over to our first team. what's going to happen now is they're going to present for about 10 minutes and then we'll do a Q&A session. So in the meantime, if you want to drop any questions into the chat, I'll be organising, I guess is the right word, that session after they've completed their presentations. So let's hand over now to Team Planet Pals with Reese, Guy, Bethan, Ursula, and Emily.
Hello everybody and welcome to our presentation. As you've just heard, I'm Reese. Today we have with me Ursula, Bethan, Guy and Emily. So you've probably heard of Strava. You may have heard of Too Good To Go, but I bet you've never heard of Planet Pals. Now what Planet Pals is an application that tackles the social and environmental issues of today in a fun and competitive way. It's an application that helps people create competitions and challenge the friends, the families, or even the co-workers to hopefully make the planet a little healthier. Now, we're going to move on to planning and delivery. So we started initially by coming up with a vast number of different ideas. Each person had something they pushed for, so it was a challenging moment for us, but we eventually decided to go for an application that we all felt we could get behind and do some really great work. We started planning on Friday and took almost the whole day to get down exactly what we needed for the new application. Because we took the whole day and it was such an extensive level of planning, it meant that we had very detailed foundation to progress from and do some great work. We started with a database, deciding what tables were needed and what structure had to be taken. We then moved on to the back end to get the routes and the methods down, so we knew exactly where we were going. Finally, as you can see from the top right hand corner of the screen, we use wireframing to design the front end and discuss the functionality. We implemented an agile methodology, and to do this, we used a Kanban board, which helped us do this. And finally, the team structure was, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, Guy was primarily on the back end, with Ursula, Bethan, and Emily in the front end. I initially started in the back end, but after it was basically finished, I moved to the front end and helped out with a little bit there. I'm now going to pass over to Bethan to go over the demo.
Lovely, thank you very much, Reese. So I'm going to give you a little insight into our beautiful application. So here we have the homepage. So as you can see, we have our lovely slogan, saving the world one competition at a time. We have the ability to log in and to register. For now, let's click on the eye in the navigation bar and have a quick look at our mission. So as my lovely colleague Reese has already explained, the purpose of our app is to help the planet one step at a time, get people together, get everyone involved. Let's go back to the homepage. We're going to log in. I already have a pre-made account under the name Rachel. So let's go ahead and click on the login button. Here I'm taken to my personalized profile where I already have 3 challenges on the go. You can see here Dry January was not very successful. It was a horrible challenge. I would not advise. Let's make a more fun challenge. So let's click on create a competition. Let's do something a bit more eco-friendly. So here we're taken to the form. Let's go for a walk to work. Description, walk instead of drive. We're helping the planet here. We can click on the time frame. Let's go for 2 weeks so we can really slash those carbon emissions. Here for the unit of measurements, we're just going to go with walks, nice and simple. Now, if we get stuck, we can click on the little help button here, which gives you a little bit more information and instructions about what to input. We can go with daily or rolling total, but we're going to go with daily because we really want to help. So upon clicking, we are taken to the personalized page for the competition. When we feel that we have done this properly, we click on update score and we can see the leaderboard. But this is way too easy. This is a solo competition. I want a group competition. So I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to send it to my colleague Reese. And when we refresh the page, we will see Reese has joined the competition. So we can see his name right now in the leaderboard. Now we can see that Reese is pretty terrible. He drives his car everywhere. He doesn't walk. He doesn't care about the planet. So I'm the host. So I think I can kick him out of this competition. So as you can see, we have the opportunity to delete or kick people out. So let's click on manage and let's get rid of Reese. He's no good. So we click on remove and we can see that it is updated to just me in the leaderboard. So I'm reigning supreme once again. So a final thing I'd like to show you, if we click on the trophy in the navigation bar, we can see the public competitions. So for example, we have Dry January. Let's not talk about that. Let's go for a different public competition. Let's go for, I think, Ready, Steady, Recycle. So if we click on the title of this, we're taken to the specific page for that competition. And to join it, it's very simple. You click on Join Competition and you're taken to that specific page. If we look in the leaderboard, we can scroll down and we can see that Rachel and Emily are doing pretty poorly. Reese, surprisingly well for someone who drives their car everywhere. Let's input a number of plastic bottles we've recycled. Let's go for 9, update, and we can see that Rachel is doing well. Still better than Emily though. If I want to leave the competition, this is very simple. I click on the button. But for now, let's log out in the top right-hand corner, which takes us nicely back to the homepage. I'm going to pass on now to my colleague Arslan, who's going to discuss the technologies we use to create the app.
Thank you, Bethany, for that great presentation. Now, when making a project of this size, there's obviously a vast amount of technologies that we're going to use. As you can see, that they've been split into 3 separate sections. We've got the front end, we've got the back end, we've got hosting. And now when deciding to choose a specific technology, there was a lot of thought put into it. Now, if you look at Django, we had the option to pick Django or Flask, and we decided to go with Django due to its authentication and its database that comes with it. There was also the option of choosing React compared to HTML and CSS by itself, and we decided to go for React due to its scalability. Now I'd like to pass on to Emily to discuss the challenges and solutions.
Thank you very much, Arslan. So our first challenge was how we wanted to display the extra information that the user might need when they were traversing the app without just putting extra text onto the page, which might make it look very cluttered. So we found a package, the React modal package, which allows us to use this use modal hook, which means we can easily create a component that will be displayed as the pop-up message that you saw on the create competition page in the help, as the warning to allow you when you want to delete a participant from a competition. So the use modal allows you to define the name of the component and then the open and close function very simply, so you can call them wherever you want to display this component very nicely. The second challenge that we faced on the front end was to do with the conditional rendering of the competition leaderboard page. So as you saw, there were a number of different views depending on if you were the host of the competition and also depending on if you were in the competition or not in the competition yet. So this use effect is called on the load of the page, and we fetch all of the data that the page could potentially have, and then we check through to check if you're the host, to check what the scores are, check all of the different conditions and set all of the states, so we can very easily render the page to be relevant to you as you are in that moment. I'll now pass to Guy to talk about our backend challenge.
Thank you. So one of the routes in the backend that we had to create was a route that would get the specific users list of competition that they are participating in and the respective score that they have for that competition, which incorporated 3 different tables at once. And with we ended up using something called a REST framework for Django. So that came with a few complications in terms of the way to do it. But the way we figured out to do it was to create a post method that you would send the user ID within that post method. And then if I would direct you to line number 23, can we go back 1 second? So if I direct you to line number 23, you can see that through the competitions, we filter using a field lookup, which is the scores _ user ID, and that will get the relevant competitions. And that user ID also needs to be used in the serializer later. So the way that's done is if we look at line number 29, we've defined a property called context, where the user ID is defined there. And as we will see on the next slide, that is used in line number 46 at the end of it, where you see self context get user ID. And then using a serializer method field, we were able to also attach the specific score to the specific competition of that specific user. I would also like to talk about a few more challenges that we had on the next slide. So one challenge that we had was to do with updating the database schema post-deployment. So luckily for us, we started deploying very early on to make sure that we are doing it properly. But what we didn't realize is the extent of accuracy that you need to have with the schema and how difficult it is to update it. But because it was so early on, resetting the database and wiping out all the data already stored in there wasn't so detrimental. But it did make us realize for future deployments how important it is to be very, very specific about the models that we make and the schema that we create. I would like to pass it over to Emily again.
Thank you. So our final front-end challenge on the previous slide still is that initially in early versions of our app, the Redux that stored the user data and whether or not they were logged in would reset when we reloaded the page, which obviously leads to a very bad user experience if you have to keep relogging in all of the time. So another React package, which was Redux Persist, allowed us to keep that user data stored for a longer period of time, so you could do all of the functionality that you wanted to be able to do without having to keep logging in, which is a good thing. And then our final challenge that we had was the fact that we had only been learning Python for the past couple of weeks, and we'd only really been properly taught Django for a day. So learning how to use it to create an app of this scale was just, it was a big task for us. And also using the REST framework that we used was completely new to us. So we had to do lots of reading of documentation to really make sure we knew which parts of it we needed to incorporate and which parts we could try and understand later. And in the end, we came up with something that we were really proud of, which was great. I will now pass to Urslan to talk about the testing.
Thank you, Emily. Now to the funnest part of the project, testing. As you can see, the testing is split up into two sections. We've got the client testing and the server testing. With the client testing, we went with Jest because we had prior experience to using Jest in past projects, and we got it up to a nice 64%. In terms of server testing, we decided to go with Django testing, but as Emily previously mentioned, we didn't have much experience using Django, so it was quite tough. But we did manage to get up to 88%. And a big part of that was using the REST framework, which tested default routes automatically, which was incredibly useful. Now, on to future features. We've got reminder notifications to keep you on track. We've got messages of encouragement once you've completed the task. But the two I'd like to focus on are public challenges for businesses and schools and sponsored competitions. We believe having sponsored competitions to invite companies to promote their own ethos. For example, having a water company that would promote challenges for drinking more water or saving more water. And we think that would be great in bringing revenue into the product. We can also have public challenges via businesses and school accounts. So Futureproof was bringing their own challenges for their own employees, for example, to keep them on track and make the product a more sociable platform. So thank you for listening, and the floor is now open for any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Really, really amazing presentation. I'm always sort of blown away every time we see it. We've had some great questions in the chat. I'm just going to start from the top and go down. So Patrick at HSBC said, how did you come up with the idea for the app and agree on the scope?
I'm happy to take that one. So the process was actually quite, I found it quite a holistic process. It was kind of brainstorming different concepts and ideas and just what are we connected to and motivated about. And just through process of just discussion and exploring different ideas, we ended up reaching to an idea that we were all feeling quite excited about and passionate about, and that we knew that that was a good direction to explore.
Fab. And Adam Adam has said, did you consider using any development aids like ESLint, TypeScript, Prettier?
So we did a lot of paired programming, and that really helped us in our development. And also some of us do have the Prettier extension, which did also really help make the app nice and smooth and all the code very nice and easy to read. That was really beneficial to us, when, especially with the paired programming, where we had to constantly be checking each other's code.
Cool, that's super. Simon Allen said, why did you choose SQL for your database management over a NoSQL database manager like MongoDB?
I'll tell you that. So when we initially were looking at the project, we were aiming more towards NoSQL, but after we decided Django, we looked at it a bit more about what works best with it, and the overwhelming view was use SQL, because a lot of people had commented that projects had to be redone that started with NoSQL, and considering the time restraint we had, it would have been a bit of a difficult task if we found ourselves in the same scenario. So we went more for the safer route that we had researched.
And if I could add to that as well, we found that the amount of extra processes that an SQL database would require compared to a NoSQL was about one step more for a certain operation, for the operations that we required, and the data structure was fairly uniform throughout. So yeah, that's also a reason why we chose that.
Really great to see you considered both options there and made a choice. Gary has said, how did you come up with the section of tools in the current stack? What were your key considerations? So I guess same question, but not just regarding the database.
Well, we've used our past experience over the past couple of weeks, and we decided, for example, with React, we found that traversing through larger apps was far more easier and easier to implement. And yeah, it was just consistent throughout in terms of what we experienced, what we found as the positive negatives for each tool and how it comes together.
Great. Patrick's asked another question, but I've just seen another one come through from Omid. So I think I'm going to go with Omid's question as our final question. Sorry, Patrick, you've already had one. Omid said, what was the hardest thing for you to agree on?
I'll take this one if that's okay. So I'm going to have to say two answers for this one. So on the Friday, well, the Thursday and the Friday when we were brainstorming, I would say we are quite a passionate team and there were lots of ideas coming together. So it was a little bit tricky to decide on the topic, but perhaps the most contentious point was the name. So we had a lot of discussions, and when we finally decided that we wanted to have an environmental focus because we wanted it to be contemporary, important, and something that could actually affect real change, combining our kind of love of tech and love of saving the planet so we can live for longer. Once we decided on this, we thought, okay, we need a name which really reflects this. So we had decided kind of on letters, which came up to a strange name of Sesh, which was popular with some people, not popular with others. So in the end, we decided Planet Pals, because as I think Arslan mentioned in the Future Futures, we really, really want this to be something which can be used in schools, particularly with children. I mean, children are very environmentally focused already, but to encourage this kind of eco mindset would be fantastic. So we wanted something that was child friendly, but also that could be used for adults and older people. So that's how we settled on Planet Pals. And it sounds like a silly thing, but a name is very important because it symbolizes the ideology of the project.
Yeah, names are always hard, right? That's it from you five. Well done, wonderful work. Lots of claps all around. I recommend having a look in the chat because we've got lots of people saying nice project, awesome, great answers, all that stuff. So congratulations, well done. We are going to move on now to our next team, which is very exciting. So our next team are made up of 5 other individuals. They are James and Angela, who you'll see entering the screen now, and 3 other people coming to a screen near you very soon, Raj and Peter. And finally, we have the magic of Zoom. Yes, Rahib is here too. So this is our second team for today. They are going to be presenting their incredible project to you. Once the slides are on the screen, I will hand over to James, Angela, Raj, Peter, and Rahib from Globetrotters.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Peter, as Sophie just said, and I'm with my team, the Conway comrades, who are James, Angela, Rahib, and Raj. Honoured today to present to you our app, the Globetrotter. So when we were coming up with our ideas, we all thought, what is something that we really miss in the pandemic that we really want to get back to once everything goes back to normal? And we all thought of going on holiday and going on trips. So we decided to make an app, Globetrotter, which helps you decide where to go on a trip. So the user will put in what kind of trip they want to go on. So it could be a beach trip, could be a hiking trip, could be a city trip, or it could be a mix of all of the categories. And the app will recommend to the user a list of destinations and a list of attractions in each destination, and help them book their flights and everything. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague Raj to discuss how we planned everything.
Thank you, Peter. For planning and delivery, we set out two teams for front-end and back-end development. We based this on preferences and strengths. There was flexibility amongst the team when required. The initial meeting took place last Thursday for brainstorming a number of ideas. We eventually came to an idea that we all liked and immediately started planning for features and technologies. We had regular morning stand-ups and meetings throughout the day. We made the initial design of our website using Figma, which is a design tool that has a great graphical user interface. This helped us plan the layout of the website and gave us a foundation to work on. We thought the design would be appealing to the user. We used colors and styles that we felt would. For technologies, we use React for the and Python Django for the backend with a Postgres SQL database. We chose React as it made use of JavaScript, making it simpler to grasp. Another advantage with React is that it's entirely component-based, making it powerful and flexible for development. We use Python Django as it had a lot of features out of the box. This saved time on development. For deployment, we use Netfire for our React client and Heroku for the backend. I now hand you over to Rahib, who will demonstrate our app.
Great, thank you, Raj. So this is our app, Globetrotters, and this is the welcome page that you first see. As you can see, there are categories, and you can sign in. We're going to sign in right now. You can register or log in with the user. I already have users, so I'm going to log in with that. And now let's plan our perfect trip. So I want an artsy, so cuisine, so a nightlife sort of trip. So I'm going to check those, and I'm going to submit. And down below, you can see the results of what we just searched. These sliders may be a bit confusing at first, but there is an info box where you can drop down and read more about it. This page is also mobile responsive. So if you go to a mobile view, the results are responsive to that. So it changes to the view width. And if you go back, you can also change the results based on the temperature. So say I'm in June and I want to solve a hot holiday. So I can select June and then increase the slider to 24 degrees, scroll down, and you can see the results have been filtered based on temperature now. I'm going to put that back, and I'm going to increase the sliders now for the categories I chose. So I want a really good sort of artsy sort of cuisine experience right now. So I'm going to look at the results, and here they are. I'm going to pick Tokyo, and this is the detailed page once you click your destination. There's an image slider that you can click through, see more stuff, and there's an attraction section that you can click on, and it takes you to a Google search. You can read more about it. There is a section here where you can look at the weather and see if the weather's all good, and a page here to look at the map and see where the location is in general. This section here is to help you with flights to get to your destination. So you put in your origin, London, you put in the number of adults, number of children, and then you click, select the airport that you want to go to and from. And then you select a link, and it takes you to Skyscanner, where you can view a list of flights that are available from those two airports that you just chose. So once you've done all that and you want to save your trip, you can click save, and it's been saved to your history. So if you go up and you click history, you can see all your saved trips. And if you click it again, you can see down below the information that you just put in for your flight has been saved. And that's perfect. And say you want to delete your trip now, you can click delete, and that will delete it from your history, and it's gone forever. And that has been the key features of our website. And I'll give it to James now.
Thank you very much, Rahib. So essentially, the challenges that we came across during our project, the first of which was the struggle in finding free APIs that would allow us to compare flight prices and hotel prices. So we came up with a solution to essentially build a URL that would link the user to Skyscanner, since all the relevant information that they would be filling out in that form is found somewhere in that URL in one way or another. But this led on to another challenge, which was finding airport codes, because contained in the URL isn't the name of the city, but the specific airport code. And the typical user isn't going to know the exact airport code where they're flying from or where they're flying to. So the solution to that I will talk about in just a moment. Another challenge we faced was finding historical weather data that would allow us to, or allow the user to filter their locations based on how hot they want the temperature to be for the month that they're traveling in. So the first solution was to create a new endpoint in our server, which reads from a data set that we found of over 600 large airports. Originally, the data set contained thousands of airports, but many of these were small airfields, small helipads and things like that. So we filtered those out just to these 600 large international ones. And when a post request is made to that endpoint with a body that contains the destination name and the origin city that the user has entered, the server checks if the received cities exist anywhere in the data set. And if a match is found, it returns to the front end the relevant airports, and along with that, the airport codes that would be needed to put into the URL. And as we saw with London, there are multiple airports to choose from. So if more than one match is found, an array is returned, and then the user is given a drop-down menu where they can choose their airport, and then the correct link is generated. So I'm now going to pass to Angela to talk about how we solved the issue with the weather.
Thanks, James. So yeah, as you saw in our demo, you could filter through with the temperature. We didn't always want that to happen, as you might want a skiing holiday, and obviously you don't want sun then. But if you did want to filter on temperature, what we do is we retrieve the results that have been generated previously, depending on the criteria, like the museum or potentially nightlife, etc. And for each of these locations, we use this weather API, which has historical data, and we work out an average for the month that the user selected. Then what we do is we just compare the average that we've worked out to the temperature that the user has selected. If it's high enough, then we send back all of those locations in a kind of an array, valid locations, and that's what the user actually sees in the end on the front end. So now I'll pass on over to Rahib for the testing.
Thank you, Angela. So let's talk about the numbers. In the backend coverage, we've achieved a 69%, and front-end coverage, we achieved 64%. So our approach to testing was, for backend, it was a bit more of a unit testing as we go along, since in the backend we have used Django, which out of the box already provides a fairly good coverage for most of the things we have. So increasing the coverage on that aspect wasn't too difficult. So we didn't prioritize it as much as front end. Whereas with front end, this project overall is more front end heavy, since we rely on a lot of external APIs, and we wanted to get the key functionality of the website done and dusted first. And then we spent one day dedicated to writing tests, getting the coverage up. And as you can see, we were able to get 64%, which I think is quite respectable. And I will pass it to Peter now.
Thank you, Rahib. So some of the future features that we are thinking about if we were to continue with this app, the first thing that came to mind for all of us was to perhaps push the app in a more eco-friendly kind of direction, and maybe present more options for choosing sustainable trips for all of our clients. So some of the things we thought of were offering, instead of just flights, also traveling by train or other public transport. Also indicating which cities have good bike networks like London and Amsterdam, or which are very pedestrian friendly, and also allowing for route planning with electric cars, like showing which airports you can rent electric cars from and where there's a high amount of electric car chargers. Also, we would want to have the app somewhat holistic for our customers. So we thought about adding in hotels similar to how we added in flights, just so that they could book find everything from our app. And finally, we wanted to maybe allow users to build some sort of itinerary. If it's in one destination, maybe creating a list of attractions they want to visit, or grouping a bunch of destinations together, maybe for like a road trip or something, or an extended holiday in a country. And with that, all I can say is thank you for your attention, and we will now be accepting questions.
Great, thank you all so much. I mean, every time I see one of these, like, it's so great just to see. Patrick's come up with another question, and if anyone does have any questions in the meantime, just drop them in the chat. So Patrick from HSBC has said, where does all that location data come from? Is it dynamic or fixed within your app?
So yeah, so we used an API called Traposo, which has a large number of locations on it. And so when you make a fetch, you can specify all the filters that we were seeing that were shown in the app. And it comes back with image data. A second call was made for attractions, which is only made when you click on that specific location. So no, the data isn't stored within our app, it's stored in an external API, which I think is continuously developing, because the scores that are given for each location based on these factors, they're constantly being updated based on user reviews at those locations. So we thought that was a much better way to go, because it'd be a lot more scalable, and sort of, yeah, we don't want to be stuck with the same set of data down the line.
Gary's just come up with sort of a follow-up question while we're on this topic, and it says, how do you manage the volume of data when you were querying that weather info?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So yeah, we had a kind of little bit of trouble with the weather because we couldn't actually find an API to use. Then I actually got a free trial on this one. So I get 50 years worth of historical data to use. But because we didn't want it to kind of obviously we have like API calls, which they do take work. So we didn't want to, we kind of made that sacrifice of precision on the weather information to make sure that we didn't have to take averages over the whole kind of over many years. But definitely, like, if we were able to support as many API calls, that'd be a way we could also make our app more precise. So yeah, we definitely had to kind of consider that.
Nice, fab. Cerise has asked a question. She's one of our associates that's on site at Leidos. She was from our Purita cohort, so probably remembers this feeling from about 3 or 4 months ago. She would like to know, what was the hardest part of the project?
Right, I think I'll take this question. So the hardest part of the project was actually finding APIs available to use, because the data that we use is like from external APIs, and many of these external APIs, there's not really a free version available, which like provides the data that we actually want. Many of them are just paid, and it was quite difficult trying to look for one that was that met all our needs. So we took a lot of time trying to research, just see what's out there actually available for us. And once we did find one, it actually worked really well. But the whole process of trying to find what's actually available to us was quite difficult in the first place.
Nice, that's great. Doesn't sound like that much of a challenge. Like, that's a little thing, no? Let's go for Ben's question. He's from MAPS. He said, why did you choose this application? Do you feel that this is a gap in the market?
Yeah, so I feel we did find a few apps which were somewhat similar, but none of them really seemed really mainstream. And I feel, especially if we were to take it with the environmentally friendly route, I feel that would be something somewhat unique and new. And I feel, especially as I said, considering that the pandemic is almost over and the holiday service is like going to start booming again soon. So I thought that there is somewhat of a gap, like, you know, and I feel like we've made our app somewhat to fill that niche a little bit.
Nice. I like that. We've got some great questions coming through, but I'm going to go for the one from Chris because I know about what happened in this team this week. So I think it's going to be interesting. So Chris from HDR Lintbells has said, were you physically together while you developed this project or working remotely? And if remote, what challenges did that throw up? How did you manage them?
I can take this one. Fortunately, most of us were on site, so we felt it was a great help. So had it been through COVID times, maybe there would be, a bit more of a challenge. And having everyone together, I think greatly sped up our development time, I would say. There were only one member who unfortunately didn't catch COVID. I can possibly my colleague Pete can explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, it was a hard time. I had COVID a week before we started the project. So unfortunately, I had to isolate for the entire time, right up until Wednesday. So I could come in Thursday and Friday. And it did present some challenges. But I think we did well in that every day, even when these guys were in the office, we always had a Slack call at the start and in the middle of the day. And a lot of the time I'd be able to work with one of the team just by being on a Slack call the entire day. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but I think we did quite well.
And it's good to see you better again and back with us. I'm going to move on now to our next team. Thank you so much, James, Angela, Raj, Peter, Rahib. Fabulous presentation, fabulous product. We're moving on now to our team eThrift. So this is Tala, Jacarul, Jasmine, Menelaus, and Kelvin. They will be our final team for today, but it is most definitely not last but not least. What they've created is so cool. I'm sure you guys will be mega impressed. If we just wait for the other guys to be spotlighted, we will get going. And whilst they are presenting, don't forget, drop your questions in the chat, and I'll try to make sure that we get to answer some of them. We will have time for that. But with that, I'll stop rambling on. If we want to go ahead for team eThrift, Jacarul, Jasmine, Menelaus, Tala, and Kelvin.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Yes, my name is Talha, and as just was said, I'm joined with Jacarul, Menelaus, Jasmine, and Kelvin, and we're the development team behind eThrift. So let me discuss the purpose of this app. So when it came to developing this app, we really wanted to create a product which had a net positive gain on the local community as well as the environment as a whole. So we came up with a platform which our users, we came up with a clean, intuitive platform which our users can advertise any of their unwanted belongings, whether that be clothes, furniture, and so on. It's really up to them what they can advertise on our platform. And members of their local community can claim these items and pick them up so they can be repurposed. So this is using the concept of free cycling with the aim of reducing the environmental impact our society has. We also encourage our users to donate to charities of their choosing to further increase the positive impact of our platform. We also have a great little feature on our website which allows users to easily identify what items are near them. You'll see that a bit later on. And we're really excited about this product and we're really happy with how it's come out. But we also have a few features which we'd like to add, which we think will take it to the next level. Again, we'll discuss that a bit later on, but for now, I'll pass it over to my colleague Jasmine, and she'll talk you through our planning and delivery.
Thank you, Tala. So early on in the project, we split the teams based on strengths and weaknesses and what people wanted to do for this final project. From the line below, you can see that initially we had Tala, Kelvin, and myself on the client side, Manny and Jaco on the server side. But as the project progressed, the server team eventually joined us on the client side as there were a lot more work on the client side. We then made use of Figma to design the layouts of the website with a desktop and mobile view. We also created an entity relationship diagram to plan the database. A Kanban board was also used to assign tasks throughout development. So on this slide, you can see some of our mobile first approach designs. You can see we have designs for the home page, profile page, search page, and product show page. And the reason we did this with a mobile first approach is because we didn't want the website to be limited to just a desktop. And the Kanban board here shows the early stages of a project. It was used to keep track of what everyone was doing so that we wouldn't end up working on the same features. And the ER diagram was created in order to map out the tables that will be saved in the SQL database and highlight the relationships between them. This helped us to give us an idea of what kind of requests to the server would be needed and what functionality would need to be implemented. So over to Kelvin now for our demo.
Thank you, Jasmine. So now for a quick rundown of the functionality of our website. So this is the home page. We have a nav bar at the top where you can sign up or register. To make a profile, we input the user's details, which include an avatar image so people can identify them. However, to save time, I'm just going to log in with an existing account. If the login details are incorrect, an error will be shown. Otherwise, we are taken back to the home page. So now that we're logged in, we can view recently viewed items at the bottom. These carousel images link us to a specific item page. From here, we can view the item description, location, as well as its various images. And if we like the item, we can claim it and get the seller's contact details. On the Find Products page, we can search for products by category. There's a map feature to show the location of currently filtered items. We can also input a keyword to search for specific items, which will also display the marker on the map. From this marker, we can click on a link to go to the items page. Results are also displayed below. Each item has a share button to share the item to Twitter. As usual, there's also a button to go to the products page. So let's create our own listing. To do this, the database requires an item name, description, location, so users can view the item on the map, category for filtering, and one or more images can be uploaded for the item. Uploaded items can be updated or deleted by the seller. We also have a profile page where you can see your rating and how many you have. Here we have options to view active items, claimed items, where we can rate the seller or click on a button to email them, which will bring up the user's default mail application. And finally, we can view and edit our profile's details. So that concludes the demo. I'll pass it over to Mene to talk about technologies we use.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. Now for our front end, we used HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React as the main framework. We also used Material UI and Bootstrap libraries for styling to enhance the look of our web page. Access was used for making HTTP requests, and Mapbox was used to implement the map feature using its location services API. Now on the backend, we went with Python's Django as the main framework since we felt it was more powerful than Flask. And we utilized its features such as the inbuilt SQLite database. We also used JSON Web Token for authenticating our users, and Cloudinary was used to store images in the cloud rather than storing them directly into our server. Now for testing, we used Jest along with React testing library for the client side and PyTest Django as it was a convenient wrapper around the PyTest library specifically for Django. Lastly, we deployed our server using Heroku and Netlify for the client. Now, moving on to some challenges and solutions that we faced. So we had to find a way to link the tables with foreign keys and fetch the appropriate data across different tables. So in this example, we're filtering through items through the items database, checking if the item is claimed. Now the image model has a foreign key which links to the item, and using serializers, we're targeting the unique ID of that item. Then we're looping over all of the filtered items to figure out which pictures correspond to each item, and finally returning them, return the combined information as the JSON object. And I'll be passing it back to Kelvin for solution number 2.
Thank you, Mene. So for solution 2, we ran into some issues when rendering the child components of the profile page. This is because they required a fetch request using the data from local storage. To fix this, we put inside our use effects, which you can see here, which triggers upon active fragment change, an if statement, which asserts that the window is defined. If this is true, a switch statement checks the active fragment variable and fetches the appropriate data from the server to load the fragment. We also have an is-mounted useRef that is checked at the start of the function to avoid unnecessary API calls when the profile page is unmounted. This useRef value is set to true upon component mounting and is made false upon dismounting. I'll pass to Jack Rule now for challenge 3.
Thank you, Kelvin. So for our final challenge, we wanted a way of assigning and also blacklisting tokens for each user who logs in. By default, Django doesn't provide such functionality. So instead, we had to get something called simple JWT. So by using simple JWT, it allowed us to provide each user who logs in with an access and refresh token. So each time they log in, it would give us a new token. And this can be seen between line 27 and line 40. And we went a step further by adding blacklisting. So once the user presses the logout button, or if their login session expires, then it should blacklist the token. This can prevent things like security holes, so a user cannot reuse a certain token for things like post requests. So now let's move on to the test coverage. So for the client side, we had a respectable 63%, while the server side, we had 78%. We decided to start testing early on so we can discover bugs at test creation. And since, because of the nature of the app and how massive it is, we knew that the code would constantly change. So that means we'll have to change the testing as well. And I think overall, the testing went very well for us. So let's move on to the future features. One of the features we wanted was buyer to seller messaging or vice versa. So for example, if a user wanted to message a seller about a certain item, asking if I could pick up from this location instead, they could. We also wanted some sort of charity donation. So this could have been achieved using PayPal integration. And finally, we could have used, we wanted a bidding system. So say an item is in high demand and multiple people want to buy at the same time, they could bid for it, and eventually the person who bids for it would pay, and the money would go directly to charity. So this is all for our app, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and please ask any questions.
Amazing work, team. Really, really impressive stuff. Let's go. We've only got 6 minutes left, so let's go rapid fire through some of these questions. Is that all right with everyone? Okay. Let's go for Adam's question at Contact. He's asked, where are you storing / managing uploaded user images? It's a good question.
So for the images, we're using a service called Cloudinary. So this is a cloud service for images. We initially decided to use saving images locally, but then we end up thinking long term, like say we deploy or scale the website further in the future, keeping it locally would just cause unnecessary bandwidth to the hosting. So we instead chose a online cloud service called Cloudinary. So the stress goes to that service instead.
Great. And Becky at UMove said, did you work out time estimates for each feature on the Kanban board? And if you did, how did that work out? Did it have any impact on delivering your product against the deadline?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So on Friday, on the first day, we assigned tasks on what we had to do and put them onto a Kanban board. And so we always used the Kanban board to keep track of what we had to do, and if we were done or in progress, we'd move them to the other columns. But there was a time when two of us would have produced the same work, and that time we didn't quite check the Kanban board. So that was a problem from our side, but we were able to resolve the conflicts and progress to our project.
Nice, cool. Giri's asked, are there any specific reasons for choosing Heroku and Netlify? Did you do any cloud integration from Netlify?
So we chose Netlify and Heroku because it's, for one, we use that in the past as well. And for one, since we use the React frontend, Netlify was like a no-brainer because they already provide building, it builds it for you. And for Heroku, is very good for handling servers. So for example, with Django, it can, it can host it properly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jasmine, another one of our ex-associates, has said, well, she's not an ex-associate, ex-student, she's now an associate. She said, would you do anything differently if you were to build this app again?
I don't mind taking this one. So initially planning, we did have a lot of features we wanted to implement. That's kind of why we went with an e-commerce route. We had so many future features, messages, notifications, all of that kind of stuff. So I think in the future, we probably would have reduced the scope of our project a bit more so that we can really flesh out like the features that we do have and make sure they're quality and increase our tax coverage even more.
Cool. Let's go for one last question before we wrap up today. Let's go for a question about security. What a way to end Friday afternoon. Chris has said, what security do you have in place to stop users from deleting other people's site listings?
So I can take this one. The buttons for updating listing and delete listing only appear for the user who actually created the listing. Otherwise, the other users can only see claim item or contact the seller. The only person that can update or change the listing is the actual user, and we fetch this information from the local storage and using the authentication tokens.
That's super cool. Congrats team. You are our final one, so well done for that. I have a couple of things to say before we wrap up, and then we're going to finish up the event with a video. So whilst we wait for the video to magically appear on our screens, I just need to take another second to thank you all so much to our Conway cohort. It really is quite amazing to see what you've delivered in just 1 week. And I always like to say that again. You guys did this in just 1 week. It's pretty amazing. I also wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's taken the time to come along today. For all of you associates that are on the call, it's fabulous to see you again. I hope you can empathize and remember how it would feel when you were in your position doing your final presentations. And to everyone else, thanks for being here. Great questions. We'll be looking to catch up with all of you to get feedback on the presentations, but hopefully today has really brought the Futureproof program to life a bit more. So for one last time, a huge congratulations to our Conway cohort. It's been an intense 13 weeks and it is remarkable to see what you've achieved. So just to finish off, we have a fun video to show off the personalities of the individuals in the group. So here we go. Thanks everyone.
Before Futureproof, I was a maths graduate, unsure of where my future was headed.
I'd only been a graduate for about 5 months and I was looking for ways to get into a career in technology.
I was an engineering graduate, tutoring in maths.
I was a computer science graduate.
Before Futureproof, I was an IT consultant.
I was a graduate trying to figure out what path to go down.
I was an engineering graduate, now ready to enter the tech industry.
I was working in insurance as an actuarial analyst.
I was a maths and philosophy graduate.
I was an economics graduate.
I was working as an English and public speaking teacher at a university in France.
I was over in the United States studying and playing soccer while on a scholarship.
I was a computer science graduate looking to apply my skills in real life projects.
I was a Padawan. Now, I am a much better Padawan.
I was a recent engineering graduate, looking for a way to break into the tech industry and start my career there.
During the course, I have learned that when you love what you do, work doesn't have to be a chore.
I have learned a huge variety of skills to help me confidently start a career in tech.
But I think most importantly, what it's taught me to do is how to sort of approach challenges and overcome any difficulties by just being resilient and resourceful.
I've learned that 2 heads are definitely better than 1.
I've learned how to build full stack web applications and how to properly use Google to find solutions.
I've learnt that I probably need to get a new laptop.
I learned essential tools and technologies to build some really cool web applications.
I found that I really enjoy working collaboratively on projects with my colleagues.
I learned that formal testing is a way bigger deal than I thought.
I learned that even the best of codes can be ruined by just a single typo.
I've learnt loads, but the main thing I'll take away is how much confidence it's given me to know that I can do what I want to do.
A surprising fact about me is I used to be a competitive swimmer and have represented the Isle of Wight in competitions.
I was once in an earthquake.
That I love making music in my spare time. So at uni, I'd have a go at making anything from chilled guitar music to drum and bass.
I used to be a black belt in Taekwondo.
I'm in possession of 4 passports.
I can understand 4 languages.
I've lived in 6 different countries.
My native language is Greek.
I can build computers.
I can play the piano, but I'm not very good at it.
I can use my upper lip as a plug for my nose using suction, though I am yet to find a practical application for this talent.
I have never booked a ball.
I watch 100 films a year.
While in the United States at a children's summer camp, I spent 2 days walking around roaring and dressed as Mufasa.
I have published 3 short stories, so I can technically refer to myself as a published author.
Thanks for listening.